Settle in and do not look away. This entire story is a single chilling journey that is best experienced in full. If you appreciate tales of the supernatural, show your support by subscribing. It lets us know you want more. Now, listen closely. Ethan shut the flashlight off entirely. The room dropped into near darkness, lit only by the thin bleed of late afternoon through the curtained windows. We stood there in silence. No more knocking, no more voices. Several minutes passed like that. Then Ethan finally turned the flashlight back on and exhaled slowly through his nose. "It's gone quiet," I said. "For now." "What is it?" His expression turned strange, not evasive, more like there were several possible answers and all of them were bad. "I don't know what it is in a final sense," he said. "I know what it does." "Which is?" "It uses whatever is loosest." I stared at him. He saw that didn't help and tried again. "In Bellmere, memory frays before reality does. The things under the fraying push upward. Voices, names, unfinished pieces. Sometimes they sound like people you know. Sometimes they sound like you. Sometimes they only knock." "Things under the fraying," I repeated. "That's not an explanation." "No," he said. "It's the truest version I have." I looked toward the basement door. It was painted white once, though age had yellowed it. A brass knob, a bolt above the knob. Nothing visibly wrong with it, nothing dramatic. Just an ordinary basement door in an ordinary kitchen. That made it worse. "What's down there?" Ethan hesitated, then, "Mostly records." "Mostly?" His eyes moved to the walls of notes around us. Some things don't stay where they're put. I wanted to leave the house. I also knew, with that same miserable certainty, that leaving without understanding more would be another kind of trap. "Mara," I said. "Tell me about Mara Velez." Ethan didn't answer right away. He put the revolver on the table, but kept it within reach, then sank into the chair across from me with the weariness of a man who had slept in fragments for years. "I didn't know her well," he said. "Not at first. She moved here maybe 8 months ago. Worked at the clinic out by County Road 6. Night shifts mostly. Smart. Careful. The kind of person who notices patterns before other people do. Like you." That earned the faintest grim smile. "Maybe." She came to the library a lot, local records room, property maps, cemetery files. She said she was tracing family history for a patient at first, but that wasn't true. She had already started noticing absences. "What kind of absences?" "The same kind you noticed. Repeated introductions. Missing flyers no one remembered posting. Conversations that lost one participant. She saw a photograph in the clinic waiting room with a woman in the back corner that no one could identify. Staff insisted the frame had always been that way, but Mara swore the woman had a name. Swore she'd spoken to her twice. I leaned forward. "What happened?" Ethan looked down at his hands. "She did what smart people do. She documented everything. Dates, names, inconsistencies. She tried to make a structure out of it." He paused. "Bellmere doesn't like structure." "That's not the whole story." "No." He reached for one of the notebooks on the table, flipped to a marked page, and turned it toward me. It wasn't a full page of writing. It was a list. At the top, in Ethan's handwriting, Last stable references, Mara Velez. Below that, nurse at Bellmere County Clinic, rented house on Finch Road, silver hatchback, Ohio plates. Migraine medication in kitchen cabinet. Knew the phrase North Ledger. Believed removals accelerate after contact with records. Said, it isn't the forgetting, it's what uses the space after. I read the page twice. What does last stable references mean? It means facts that stayed in place longer than others. Longer? He nodded. At the end, people don't vanish all at once. They become disputed, then thin. You start collecting whatever still resists. The phrasing made me sick. At the end, I repeated. You mean before they disappear? Yes. I looked up. Did you see it happen to her? His jaw tightened. I saw part of it. That was not the same as no. He got up and crossed to one of the wall boards where Polaroids hung in uneven rows clipped to twine. Most showed ordinary things: street corners, porches, the church sign, store interiors, parked cars, a library table. At first, I didn't understand why he had photographed such random subjects. Then I noticed what they had in common. Every frame included a handwritten card somewhere in view. Names, dates, notes held up by a hand or placed on surfaces. Anchor points. Ethan slid one photo free and handed it to me. It showed the library's back steps at dusk. On the top step sat a woman with dark hair pulled into a loose knot, wearing a long coat and holding a paper cup. Beside her was an index card propped against the railing. Mara Velez, November 3rd. Her face was serious, not posed. She looked like someone in the middle of thinking. She made me start using photographs, Ethan said. Said notes could be reinterpreted, but images gave context. I kept staring at her. She looked real in the most devastating way possible. Not eerie, not dramatic, just tired, intelligent, alive. What happened after this? We compared timelines, Ethan said. Found 6 probable removals in 3 years, maybe more. She thought the county records were the key, especially cemetery transfer files from the road expansion. There was a ledger she kept mentioning, a North ledger. Some older burial index that never made it into the official archive. The note on your wall said North ledger missing. It was already missing when she found the gap. I turned the photo over. Nothing on the back. When did things go bad? Ethan gave a dry laugh with no humor in it. When she got close. He returned to the notebook, flipped several pages, then found another entry and read aloud. November 14th. Mara reports contradiction event at clinic. 2 staff deny ever working with patients she saw previous evening. Sign-in sheet retains partial entry. Security footage from hallway shows empty corridor at timestamp in question. He looked up. After that, it moved quickly. It? Whatever enforces the forgetting. The room creaked softly around us. Outside, wind brushed the side of the house. I heard myself ask the next question before I decided to. Did she leave town? Ethan's silence answered before he did. No. Why not? She tried. I felt a pressure build behind my eyes. What happened? He took a long breath, then crossed to a cabinet drawer and pulled out a folded county road map. He spread it on the table between us and flattened it with both hands. Bellmere sat near the middle like an afterthought, roads curling in and out through woods and farmland toward 2 neighbouring towns and the state route beyond. Ethan pointed to the western road. 3 times in local accounts, people who were in late-stage removal tried to leave, he said. All 3 made it out physically. That sounds good. No, he said. Listen. He tapped the first penciled mark on the map. 1948. Farmhand named Lewis Granger, according to his sister. Sister remembered him for another 11 days after he left Bellmere. Everyone else lost him within 48 hours. By day 12, even she only remembered that she had lost someone. Second mark. 1979. A teacher named Ellen Pike drove to Marston, checked into a motel under her own name. Clerk later insisted she had never been there. Car found in lot, room clean. No witnesses that held. Third mark. Mara made it the farthest. County Line gas station 20 miles south. She called me from a payphone. I stared at him. You spoke to her? Yes. What did she say? He swallowed. She said she had done it. She said she could still remember Bellmere and that maybe distance mattered. She was crying, but not in a panicked way, more like relief. Then she got quiet. The room felt smaller with every word. Why? Ethan looked at me with a kind of helpless anger. Because the man at the gas station asked if she needed help, he said. And when she turned to answer him, he had no idea who she was. I closed my eyes. She was standing right there, Ethan continued softly, talking to him, and he looked at her like she had just appeared in the middle of a sentence. She told me her voice had started sounding wrong in her own ears. She said even outside Bellmere, if no one could hold her in memory, she wasn't sure what she still counted as. What happened after that? She told me to write her down. His voice roughened. Then she said one more thing. What? Ethan's eyes drifted to the basement door. She said, if I call again and I know too much, don't answer. I wanted to ask whether she had called again. I already knew the answer. She did, Ethan said. My chest tightened. The next night, after midnight, same payphone, I think, but it wasn't right. He rubbed a hand over his mouth. She knew details I had never told her. Names from old notebooks, phrases from my walls. She said there were people on the road that no one else could see, standing between the telephone poles. She said Bellmere wasn't just forgetting people, it was making room. Then she started using my own voice in the middle of sentences. A pulse of cold moved through me, like the basement. Yes. Did you hang up? He nodded once, after she laughed. The silence that followed was heavy and shapeless. I looked again at Mara's photograph. She had become, somehow, more frightening in her ordinariness. The fact that she wasn't a legend, not a ghost story, not an old town rumour, but a woman who had held coffee on library steps and written notes and tried to be methodical, that made her fate feel immediate. possible? Close enough to touch. What do you mean she knew too much? I asked finally. Ethan sat back. I think there's a threshold. If a person gets partially removed, the gap around them doesn't stay empty. Something starts using it. Sometimes it only echoes. Sometimes it learns. Learns what? He looked straight at me. How to sound like belonging. The house gave another soft, settling groan, and this time I flinched. Ethan noticed. You need rules, he said. Yes. Not guesses, rules. He stood again and moved to a corkboard near the stairs. Pinned there were index cards numbered in thick black marker. Some had been crossed out and replaced. Others were stained or curling at the edges from age. He removed 7 cards and laid them in front of me one by one. 1. Start every morning by reading your name, date, and verified history aloud. 2. Keep at least 3 written anchors on your body at all times. 3. If someone fails to recognize you twice in one day, do not sleep alone. 4. Never answer a voice you cannot place in open sight. 5. Do not trust telephones after dark. 6. Photographs help, but only if labeled immediately. 7. If the town contradicts your residence, leave a record in a public place before sunset. I read them in silence. Is that all? No, he hesitated. Then he pulled one more card from his pocket. This one was worn at the corners from being handled often. He placed it on top of the others. 8. If you begin hearing yourself from elsewhere, you are running out of time. I looked up slowly. How much time? We don't know. That's not helpful. It's what I have. I pushed back from the table and stood, suddenly too keyed up to sit. So what's the plan? Sit in your note-covered house and wait to stop existing? Ethan's expression hardened. The plan is not to let Bellmere isolate you. It already has. Not completely. I still know you when the names are used. That matters. For how long? He didn't answer. I laughed once, brittle and sharp. Great. Daniel, no, tell me straight. If this is late-stage removal, say it. He stood too. Fine, it may be. May? You still have traction. Your notebook helps. You are forming stable recall when prompted. That's good. That doesn't sound good. In Bellmere, it is. I turned away and put both hands on the edge of the sink, trying to slow my breathing. Through a crack in the curtain over the kitchen window, I could see dusk pressing against the yard. The world outside looked unbearably normal. Bare branches, gray sky, a neighbor's fence line. Nothing supernatural, nothing impossible. And yet the impossible was already inside the walls. Then I noticed something at the lower edge of the window, a strip of paper tucked beneath the outer frame. I frowned and moved closer. Ethan? His chair scraped behind me. What? There's something outside. He came to the window and carefully lifted the curtain no more than an inch. The paper had been folded and wedged between the sill and the storm window from the outside. We looked at each other once. Then he unlocked the window, raised it slightly, and pulled the paper in with 2 fingers. It was damp with evening mist, folded twice. No name on the outside. Ethan opened it. The handwriting was fast, slanted, and unmistakably not his. Not mine either. A woman's hand, maybe. Across the center of the page were 6 words. She's still at the gas station. For a second I couldn't process them. Then my eyes dropped lower. There was more. A second line, written smaller, harder. But she isn't alone anymore. Neither of us spoke. The sound that broke the silence came from the cassette recorder on the table behind us. One of them had turned on by itself. The reels began to move with a dry, mechanical spin.
A burst of static filled the room. Then, through the hiss, a woman's voice said clearly, "Ethan, don't let Daniel drive south." I knew that voice before Ethan did, because I had just been staring at her face. Mara Velez, and she sounded terrified. Ethan lunged for the recorder so fast he nearly knocked the table over. The cassette kept turning. Static washed through the room in a dry ocean hiss, and beneath it, Mara's breathing came in short, uneven pulls, as if she had started recording while running or hiding or trying not to make noise. "Ethan," she said again, farther from the microphone now, "if this plays at the right time, listen carefully. If it plays at the wrong time..." A pause. Then, in a voice pulled thin by fear, "Then I'm sorry." The tape clicked softly, adjusted itself, and continued. I didn't realize I had stepped closer until Ethan put out one arm across my chest, stopping me, as though physical distance still mattered. Mara kept speaking.
"I'm at the South County station, the one with the green ice machine and the broken light over pump 3. If Daniel is with you, do not let him come here after sunset. Don't let him answer anyone who says they knew him before Bellmere. It isn't using memory the way we thought. It's using recognition." Ethan and I looked at each other at the exact same second. Recognition, not memory. That landed somewhere deeper. On the tape, Mara took a shaky breath. "I was wrong about the road. You can leave the town, but you can't leave the pattern once it has enough of you. It follows the points where other people are supposed to confirm you. Clerks, cashiers, strangers, anyone whose mind has a place ready to hold a person for a moment." Her voice dipped, as if she were looking over her shoulder. "That's why it gets worse when someone asks who you are. That's not a harmless question. It's an opening." Static surged. For a second, I thought the tape had ended. Then Mara spoke again, much quieter. "I tested it." Ethan closed his eyes once. On the tape, she gave a small laugh that had no life in it at all. "Of course I tested it." I couldn't stop staring at the recorder. The voice didn't sound dead. It didn't sound supernatural. It sounded like a woman who had been trying very hard to remain rational for too long and had run out of room. "I went inside," she said, "bought coffee, asked the man at the counter if he'd seen me before. He said no. I asked if he remembered me from 20 minutes earlier. He said I'd never been there." Another pause. When he looked away from me to ring up another customer, I saw my reflection in the cooler door. She stopped talking. For a moment, there was only tape hiss. When she finally continued, her voice was thinner than before. It wasn't keeping up. The words passed through me like cold water. "What does that mean?" I whispered. Ethan lifted a finger for silence. Mara answered me from the tape anyway. "My reflection was delayed," she said. "Only by a second or two at first, then more, like it needed time to decide I was still in the frame. I think that's what happens when the recognition breaks down. The world doesn't lose you all at once. It starts asking for confirmation from itself." My stomach turned. On the tape, something clattered in the background. Mara inhaled sharply. "He's outside again," she whispered. The next seconds were the most awful yet, because of how little happened. No scream, no attack, no dramatic sound at all. Just the tiny noises of a person becoming afraid in hiding.
breath held too long, fabric shifting, one shoe scraping linoleum by accident. Then Mara said, very softly, "He keeps using different faces." Ethan stopped the tape. The click of the button sounded violent in the room. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. The house seemed to listen. Finally, I said, "Play the rest." "No." I turned to him. "What do you mean, no?" His face had gone distant in that specific way I had already learned to hate. Not confusion, but the look of someone calculating how much truth a moment can tolerate. "There's more on that tape," I said. "Yes." "Then play it." He shook his head. "Not yet." Anger flared through me so quickly it felt almost good. Anger was clean, easier than fear. "Not yet," I repeated. "Mara just warned you about me by name from a tape that turned itself on, and your plan is not yet." She recorded 3 versions. That stopped me. "What?" Ethan leaned both hands on the table and looked at the machine as if it were a sleeping animal. 3 tapes, he said. Same date written on all of them. Same station. Same voice, at least at first. I've only listened to one all the way through. His jaw tightened. After that, I made rooms about timing. I stared at him. Why? Because later in the recordings, she knows things she shouldn't know. And every time I listened too soon, I lost hours after. The sentence took a second to make sense. You lost... What do you mean, hours? I mean, I would hear the tape at 6 in the evening and find myself outside at 9 with dirt on my hands and no memory of leaving the house. That quieted my anger a little. Not because it made me feel better, because it made arguing harder. So the tape changes? No, I change around it. I thought of the basement voice, Nolan's voice, my own. What part of Bellmere isn't using recognition? I asked. Ethan didn't answer directly. Instead, he pulled Mara's photograph back from where I had left it on the table and tapped the labelled index card in the frame. You know why this helped for a while? He asked. Because it proved she existed. Partly, but more than that, it forced the image and the name to arrive together. Bellmere seems to work best when one of those slips loose from the other. He looked up at me. That's what it's been doing to you. People still see a man standing in front of them. They just can't keep the attachment stable. The idea made me feel briefly unreal, as if my outline and my identity were 2 separate things precariously tied together with string. Then why do the voices know so much? I said. Ethan finally sat down again, exhausted all at once. I think when enough recognition peels away, whatever is underneath gets access to the unlabeled parts. The unlabeled parts of what? You. That answer sat between us. Not satisfying, not philosophical, just horrible. I looked toward the notes on the walls again and saw them differently now. They weren't just reminders. They were labels hammered into the surface of reality like nails. Who, where, when, still here. Play the tape from the beginning again, I said quietly. Ethan hesitated, then nodded once. Only the beginning. He rewound it. This time I listened harder, not to the fear in Mara's voice, but to the structure beneath it. The details, the way she anchored herself,
The green ice machine, the broken light over pump 3, the clerk, the cooler door. She was doing exactly what Ethan and I had been doing, forcing context to stay attached. When the tape ended at the same cut point, Ethan stopped it again before the rest could play. I said, "We have to go there." His answer came too fast. "No. She said she's still there. She wrote that line from outside the window, not the tape." "Maybe." His eyes narrowed. "That matters." I knew it did. I just didn't care enough in that moment. If Mara is still at that station, she may not be Mara. I slammed my palm against the table, making the cassettes jump. Then what exactly are we doing here? The house rang with the noise for a second. Ethan looked at me steadily. "We are trying to keep you from becoming easier to use." I laughed once, ugly and sharp. That ship may have sailed. He didn't deny it. That scared me more than anything else he'd said in the last hour. I turned away and paced the room, stepping around piles of notebooks and extension cords and taped down photographs. My mind kept circling the same thought. Mara had gotten farther than anyone. She had reached the station. She had called. She had left evidence. If there was any point beyond Bellmere where something remained, I needed to see it. Or maybe I just needed movement. Stillness was becoming its own kind of madness. "I'm going," I said. Ethan rose immediately. Not alone. For the first time since arriving, that almost felt like comfort. We left before full dark. Ethan insisted on preparation with a ritual precision that told me he'd done this before and paid dearly when he hadn't. He made me read my own information aloud from the notebook while he checked items off a laminated card. "My name is Daniel Mercer," I said. "I moved to Bellmere from Chicago on September 24th. I live above Harrigan Hardware on Mercer Street. Ethan Vale knows me when prompted with anchor names." "Again," he said. I repeated it. He handed me 3 index cards and a marker. "Write your name and date on all of them. One in your jacket pocket, one in your shoe, one inside your sleeve." I did. Then he gave me a Polaroid of myself. I stared at it. It must have been taken while I wasn't paying attention. Me sitting at his table not 20 minutes earlier, notebook in one hand, face pale and strained under the lamp. At the bottom, in thick marker, Ethan had written, "Daniel Mercer, in Ethan's house, October 18th, still present." "This is insane," I said. "Yes." He handed me the photo anyway. I tucked it into the inside pocket of my jacket. Next came the rules for the road. "No radio," Ethan said. "No phone calls. If we stop and anyone asks if we know them, answer only with your own name. Don't let strangers supply your history. Don't argue contradictions in public. Don't look into reflective glass longer than you need to." I frowned. Why not? Because sometimes the lag starts there. I thought of Mara's cooler door reflection and said nothing. Ethan checked the revolver, then tucked it into the back of his waistband. I was too frightened and too tired to object. As we stepped onto the porch, the air felt brittle with evening cold. The first true dark of autumn was gathering between the trees. Across the road, a porch light snapped on at the neighbour's house. For one bizarre second, normal life pushed against all of it. Someone was making dinner somewhere. Someone was washing dishes. Someone might be sitting in front of a television, complaining about weather or bills or a football score. And 2 men were leaving a note-covered house with labelled photographs and index cards hidden in their clothes, because a town might be erasing them by increments. Bellmere did not look like a place capable of what it was doing. That, I was starting to understand, was one of its strengths. The drive south took 23 minutes. I know because Ethan made me write the departure time on my wrist before we left, and the arrival time when we parked. The roads out of Bellmere were narrow and mostly empty, lined with trees that stood black against the fading sky. Every now and then we passed a farmhouse light in the distance, or a mailbox shining pale in the headlights. Otherwise, nothing. Neither of us spoke much. Once, maybe 10 minutes in, I caught myself trying to remember what Nolan's apartment in Chicago had smelled like in winter. The thought arrived with unnatural force, and before I could settle on an answer, Ethan said sharply, "Stay present." I looked at him. I didn't say anything. "You went somewhere." "How could you tell?" He kept his eyes on the road. "Because you stopped looking like this road mattered." I didn't know what to do with that. At mile marker 12, we passed the county line sign. I felt not a release exactly, more like pressure changing in a room. Bellmere was behind us now, at least on the map. But I couldn't tell whether that meant safety or just distance from the original wound. The station appeared around a bend in the road exactly as Mara had described it. Single-story building, 2 pumps beneath a flat canopy, green ice machine beside the side wall, broken light above pump 3, dead and dark, while the others hummed weak yellow onto the concrete. Seeing it made the tape real in a way memory hadn't. "This is it," I said. "I know." There were 2 cars in the lot. One pickup near the air pump, one dark sedan parked crooked near the side entrance. The open sign in the window was lit. That disturbed me immediately. I don't know what I expected. Abandoned pumps, boarded glass, some clear sign that this place belonged to the weirdness around it. Instead, it looked alive, functional, occupied. Ethan cut the engine, but neither of us got out. The station windows reflected the lot in flat rectangles of weak light. Through the front glass, I could see shelves, a coffee machine, a newspaper rack, and a man at the register reading something. Normal. "Maybe she really was here," I said. "She was." "No, I mean, maybe there's still evidence." "There may be." "That's not the same." "No." I took the Polaroid from my jacket and looked at my own labelled face. For some reason, that steadied me more than the notebook had. Then I noticed another figure. At the far edge of the lot, beyond the ice machine, a woman was sitting on the curb beside the dark sedan. I sat up so suddenly the seatbelt locked against my chest. "Ethan." He saw her at the same time. She was turned slightly away from us, elbows on knees, hair dark, coat long and pale under the canopy light. From this distance, I couldn't see her face clearly, but the posture, God, the posture looked human, in the exact, exhausted way Mara's photograph had looked human. "She's alone," I whispered. Ethan didn't answer. The woman slowly turned her head toward our car. Even through the windshield and the dark, I felt the attention land. Not aggressive, not startled, expectant. Then, with deliberate calm, she stood up and raised one hand in a small wave. I reached for the door handle. Ethan grabbed my arm hard enough to stop me. "Look at the sedan," he said. I did. The driver's side door stood open a few inches. The interior light was off, but something was wrong with the shadow inside. At first, I thought there was a person in the passenger seat, leaning forward. Then I realized I was looking at a reflection from the station window. No, not reflection. Overlap. A second image of the woman on the curb sat inside the car at the same time, motionless and facing front. I stared until my eyes watered. Outside, the woman by the curb still had her hand raised. Inside the car, her duplicate shape did not move at all. "What am I seeing?" I whispered. Ethan's face had gone rigid. "Do not get out." The woman lowered her hand. Then she began walking toward us. Slowly. Not limping. Not dragging herself. Just moving with the careful reserve of someone approaching a skittish animal. As she passed through one stripe of canopy light, I saw her face. It was Mara. Or enough of Mara to make denial feel stupid. Same shape, same dark hair, same serious mouth. But there was something wrong with the timing of her expression. It changed too late. She looked at us, and half a second after the look arrived, the rest of her face adjusted around it. A lag. Tiny. Impossible. My pulse started hammering in my throat. "She's not right," Ethan said. Mara, or the thing wearing Mara's recognition, reached the front of the car and bent slightly to look in through my window. The glass separated us by inches. I could see my own dim reflection overlaying her face. Her lips moved. At first, I couldn't hear her through the closed window. Then she tapped the glass once and mouthed very clearly, "You took too long." I forgot the rule. Not all of them, just the most important one in that moment. I rolled the window down an inch. Ethan swore and grabbed for the controls, but too late. Cold air slipped in, and with it, Mara's voice. Perfectly clear. "Daniel," she said softly, "I've been waiting." My mouth went dry. "How do you know me?" She smiled, not broadly, not maliciously, just with a kind of tired familiarity that would have been comforting in any other world. "Because you came after me," she said. Ethan leaned across me and slammed the window shut. Mara's face stayed there for 1 second longer, calm against the glass. Then her eyes moved, not to Ethan, not to me, but to my reflection in the window. A strange flicker passed through her expression. Recognition, noticing recognition. And suddenly she stepped back, fast, too fast. Not running, just one abrupt, smooth retreat that seemed to skip a frame. Ethan started the engine. The man inside the station looked up from the register for the first time. He turned toward the windows, toward us, toward Mara. And his face emptied completely. No surprise, no alarm, no sign he was seeing anything unusual at all. He was looking at a scene with no stable labels. Then, from somewhere behind the station, not inside it, not in the road, but from the dark field beyond, came a voice calling my name. My real voice. Not from a basement now, out in the open. Daniel. One call. Soft. Near enough to be possible. Ethan threw the car into reverse so hard the tires screamed on the concrete. As we backed out, I looked once toward the field and saw shapes standing between the telephone poles, not moving, not approaching, just people-shaped absences in the dark, spaced at even intervals all along the roadside, like they had been waiting there for a very long time. Ethan spun the wheel and the car shot out onto the road. For the first 30 seconds, neither of us spoke. I was still turned half around in the seat, staring back through the rear window. The station lights shrank behind us. Mara remained under the canopy, not chasing, not waving now, just standing perfectly still beside the pumps, while the dark shapes held their places beyond her. Then distance folded them away. I faced front again. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't hide it. Ethan drove with both hands locked on the wheel. Finally, I said, "That was her." "No." "You saw her face." "I saw a structure using her face." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." I pressed my hands against my eyes. "She knew my name." "Yes." "She said I came after her." "Yes." "Why?" Ethan said nothing. I dropped my hands. "Why?" His voice, when it came, was low and flat. "Because you were on her list before you arrived in Bellmere." Everything in me seemed to pause at once. "What?" He didn't look at me. "In one of the later notebooks, before you got here, before I met you, Mara wrote your name." That shouldn't have been possible. So naturally, I knew at once it was true. "No," I said. "Yes." "Why would she know my name?" "I don't know." "That's not good enough." "It's what I have." I turned toward the side window and stared at nothing while the road unspooled under us. My name, written by Mara before I ever came to Bellmere. The thought did not fit anywhere stable in my mind. It kept sliding off the edges of logic and returning sharper. At some point, I realized something else. "Pull over," I said. Ethan frowned. "What?" Pull over. He did, reluctantly, onto a gravel shoulder beneath a stand of dead trees. The headlights washed over a ditch and a wire fence. I dragged the notebook from my jacket, flipped to the page where I had copied the names from Ethan's discarded spiral notebook. Lena, Grace, Martin, June, Peter, Mara, Daniel. I had assumed the names were previous victims, or anchor names, or people Ethan needed to remember. Now they looked different. Not a list of lost people. A sequence. Mara had been second to last. My name had been last, as if I were next. Ethan saw it happen on my face. "You understand now," he said quietly. I looked up at him. "No," I said. "I understand less." But even as I said it, another memory opened. Not a recovered memory, not mine. More like a shape inside my thoughts that had always been there and had just been given a label. A conversation. A phone call. Nolan telling me Bellmere would be good for me. Quiet, cheap, forgettable in the best possible way. I had believed him because, of course I had. He was my friend. But now, for the first time, I asked the question I should have asked weeks earlier. How had Nolan heard of Bellmere? And why had he sounded, just for a second that night on the phone, like he was repeating a recommendation rather than making one? I must have made some sound because Ethan said, "What?" I looked at him with my heart trying to beat out of my throat. I don't think I chose this town. The wind moved through the trees outside with a dry, rattling whisper. Ethan went very still. Then he said the one thing I was most afraid to hear. Mara said that too. The road back to Bellmere felt longer. Maybe because now the dark outside the car didn't look empty anymore. Once you've seen the wrong thing standing in the right place, the world doesn't easily return to innocence. Every telephone pole became a possible marker. Every break in the trees looked like it might contain a figure waiting just beyond the reach of the headlights. Even the road itself felt changed. Not physically, but in intention, as though it had always been leading somewhere more specific than town lines and addresses. Neither of us spoke for several miles. I sat with the notebook open on my lap, staring at the 7 names until the letters lost shape and became black wounds in the paper. Lena, Grace, Martin, June, Peter, Mara, Daniel. A sequence, or a ladder, or a record of something being built in order. My name at the bottom looked final in a way names should never look. At some point, Ethan reached across the center console and tapped the page once. Close it for a minute. I need to look at it. No, you need to stop letting it become the only structure in your head. I hated that he was probably right. I shut the notebook and leaned back, pressing it against my chest instead. The car heater made the air dry and stale. My throat hurt. My eyes felt gritty. I had the strange sensation that I'd been awake for days, even though I knew that wasn't true. or thought I knew. In Bellmere, time had started acquiring the same unreliable texture as memory. That thought made me check my watch. The hand said 8:14. The digital clock in Ethan's car said 7:51. I stared at them both. Ethan, he glanced over. What? My watch. He looked. Then, with a calmness that frightened me, he said, "Take it off." What? Now. I unbuckled it with clumsy fingers and held it up between us. The second hand wasn't moving smoothly. It would tick once, then hesitate, then jump twice. Ethan took the watch from me at the next straight stretch of road, rolled the window down 2 inches, and threw it into the ditch without ceremony. I turned toward him. That was my father's. I know. The answer stunned me into silence. After a second, I said, "How do you know that?" "You told me earlier." I didn't. He looked at me, truly looked at me, and for the first time all evening, I saw fear in him that was not abstract. "Yes," he said, "you did." I searched my own memory and found nothing. Not uncertainty. Nothing. A blank seam where a conversation should have been. My chest tightened. When? In the house, before the tape. He tightened his hands on the wheel. You were talking about how your father wore it every day after your mother died, and how when he finally gave it to you, it felt like he was handing you proof of continuity. I stared at him. Word for word, it sounded true. Not because I remembered saying it, because it was true. My father had done exactly that. Only I had never told Ethan. At least, I didn't think I had. The road hummed beneath us. I looked down at my own hands, suddenly less certain they belonged to one uninterrupted version of me. "What's happening?" I whispered. Ethan didn't answer immediately. Then, quietly, "It may be trying to reorder you faster than your memory can keep up." That doesn't mean anything. It means you might already be participating in events you can't later hold. I laughed once, very softly. Not because it was funny, because there was something obscene about how clinical the nightmare had become. At 8:03 by the car clock, we crossed back into Bellmere. I felt it. There is no better way to say that. No sign announced the town line. No visible shift in the road or trees or air. But something in me registered return, the way a bruise registers pressure. A subtle inward flinch. A fitting into place that felt wrong because it was too exact. Ethan felt it too. I knew from the way his jaw set. "Don't sleep tonight," he said. I turned to him. "What?" "Whatever happens, don't sleep." "Why?" "Because after contact events like that one," he stopped, searching for a term that wouldn't sound completely insane and failing. "After exposure, things tend to consolidate during sleep." Consolidate? Yes. as in the damage gets organized. He gave one short nod. That was enough for me.
Thank you for staying until the very end of this story. The darkness still hides many secrets, and more mysterious tales are yet to come. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you won't get lost in the shadows and will be the first to hear them.